Welcome to the Hidden Corners, where truth and terror collide. Discover a realm where the lines between the living and the supernatural blur, as you embark on a journey to the paranormal and visit the mysterious hidden corners of your mind. Hey friends! As we travel through Cambodia in this season of the Wolfman Chronicles, I want to take a moment to thank you from the bottom of my heart for going on this journey with me. I know we're touching on some incredibly difficult and painful topics: human trafficking, genocide, injustice, but I hope you'll understand why it matters. Remembering history, no matter how dark, helps us become better, more compassionate people. When I visited Cambodia, I walked through the very places Jack and Nadia are exploring. The scars of the past are still visible, but so is the strength and spirit of the people. Like Jack says in the story, you don't see something like this and walk away unchanged. I didn't, and I don't think any of us should. I want to thank you for listening to this story, for caring, for staying with me through the beauty and the heartbreak. I'm honored to share this journey with you.
Welcome to the Wolfman Chronicles. This is Chapter 3 of Book 8, Episode 93. Cambodia, Shadows and Scars. Now, to say that Viktor Kamarov was mad would be putting it mildly. He stood at the tall windows of his estate outside of Moscow, a glass of vodka in his hand, trembling slightly despite his iron grip. "Gone?" he hissed. Across the room, a man in a black coat gave a hesitant nod. "Yes, sir. All 36 of them. Gone before shipment. Someone found the warehouse just hours before our driver arrived. They moved fast, quiet, professional." Victor turned slowly, his blue eyes like glacier ice, hard and lethal. "And what did you do about it, Mikhail?" Mikhail swallowed hard. "We've contacted Mr. Black. He says he's investigating. He says he can get more." Victor slammed the glass down on the polished sideboard. It shattered into 100 glittering shards. The loss wasn't just money. It was reputation. Weakness. If word spread that Viktor Kamarov's operations were vulnerable, that someone had dared interfere with his pipeline of flesh without consequence, heads would roll, literally. "Get me a flight to Cambodia." He strode across the room with big, heavy steps. "I will deal with Mr. Black personally." But sir," Victor turned, his gaze pinning Mikhail like a dagger through the chest. "Now!" he yelled. Mikhail scurried from the room, leaving Victor in the silent wake of his fury. Phnom Penh, 2 days later. The humid air clung to Victor's skin like wet silk, thick and oppressive. His fine Italian suit was already darkened at the collar with sweat, but he made no move to change to the light linen suit he had packed. He wanted to feel uncomfortable. It kept him sharp and focused. A black SUV pulled up outside the airport and the door opened for him. Inside sat Somchai Rathana, known as Mr. Black, a sharp-featured small Cambodian man with expensive sunglasses and a cold, unreadable smile. "Mr. Black," Victor said as he climbed in, not bothering with pleasantries. "Mr. Kamarov," Somchai nodded. "I would have come to you," he said in broken Russian. "And I am coming to you," Victor said, his voice like steel. "And I want answers." Somchai nervously lit a cigarette. They came at night. No one saw them approach. They were silent, organized. They took down our guards, and then they took the girls. Who were they? Victor demanded. We think it was a freelance bleeding heart rescue operation. There are a few here in Cambodia, and we're not sure which one it was. And you didn't see it coming? Victor asked coolly. I didn't say that, Somchai replied. I said they were good and professional, not invisible. We're already narrowing it down. We have a good idea who it might have been. I want to know exactly who took these girls, and I want another shipment rounded up immediately. Do you understand me? Viktor Komarov took the cigarette from Somchai's finger and snuffed it out on the back of Somchai's hand. Somchai flinched, nervously pushing a strand of black hair away from his forehead. It was not the first time his hand had been scarred with burn marks. Yes, Mr. Komarov, I understand. With the girls safely hidden in an old monastery, a place frequented and tended to only by monks in saffron robes, Alexei told Jack and Nadia to essentially get lost for a few days. Lose yourself in the crowds. Don't draw any attention to yourselves. Hang out where the tourists are. Go visit some museums, temples, anything that won't draw suspicion. And for heaven's sakes, Jack, get rid of that cowboy hat. The idea here is to blend in so no one notices you. Nadia laughed, elbowing Jack. Expecting Jack to blend in is like asking a bull to quietly tiptoe through a china shop. Well, what can I say? I'm a cowboy, not a damn tourist, Jack grinned. Alexei didn't smile. I'm serious. Word is that Viktor Komarov is here, in Cambodia. Our sources tell us that his plane arrived this morning, and his men have eyes everywhere. They're going to be watching for anyone who looks suspicious after what happened at the warehouse. And if those two guards are still alive and saw either one of you, then you are definitely a target. These next few days are about staying alive. Yeah, we'll disappear into the crowds, Jack said. Just give us a number to check in if things go sideways. Alexei handed Jack a small slip of paper with a phone number on it. Now, we change our phones regularly. I suggest you do the same. And don't use the internet for anything other than maps or to Google touristry info. That means don't check your emails or go on Facebook or anything like that. Don't go to any site that already has your name and password or a profile. It's easy to track someone through the sites they visit, and it's a surefire way for someone to find you. Understood, Nadia said. Well, we'll be watching the monastery. Victor won't find the girls, Alexei said. And one more thing. I want to thank you both. We've just rescued 36 girls and stopped Victor's shipment from happening. Now, that's a huge accomplishment. I don't know what's next because Victor will be scrambling to pull together another shipment. Half the police force here are under his payroll or others like him, but the ones that aren't, the good ones, will be doing what they can to help us catch him while he's here on our soil. Jack shook Alexei's hand and Nadia gave him a quick hug. It felt like a win, but it was only the beginning. Jack hailed a tuk-tuk and asked the driver to take them back to the hotel for a change of clothes. And for the past 2 days, they'd stayed at the monastery, hidden out with the girls and helping to get them settled in. They'd been instructed not to use their phones and needed to get to a market to buy burner phones. He was sure Sasha was worried sick not hearing from him for the past 2 days. Mark met them as they walked through the entrance of the Sangham Hotel. Look, I've been trying to reach you, Mark said. There were 2 men here looking for you, and they kept checking back. They wanted to book a room here, but I told them I was booked solid. I sent them to the Pavilion Hotel. Now, I don't know if they were friends or not, but until I checked with you, I didn't want them anywhere around here. Well, I appreciate that, Jack replied. Did they give you their names? Yeah, one was Miguel, I think, and the other was a very suspicious looking and had shifty dark eyes. He looked like Romanian or Croatian. I think he said his name was Julian. There was something about him that made me think of Dracula. A big grin crossed Jack's face, and he let out a hearty laugh. Well, I'll be. Those two devils didn't tell us they were coming. Sasha must have sent them to drag us home. It'll be great to see them. Well, I'm glad they're friends of yours, Mark replied. In that case, I do have rooms available. After changing into more touristy clothing, Jack and Nadia got back into the tuk-tuk and headed for the pavilion. Now, it was easy to find Miguel and Julian sitting at the bar next to the hotel. Hey, great to see you, Jack exclaimed. What a surprise. Where the hell have you two been? We're on a mission to make sure you two get out of Cambodia safe and sound, and quickly as possible. Miguel laughed. Sasha's orders. Then we get here, and the two of you are nowhere to be found. Didn't you get your phone messages? Oh, sorry, I had to get a new phone. We've been on a mission ourselves, Jack explained. But it sure is good to see you both. Well, they moved from the bar to a secluded table, nestled amidst tall palms and lush green foliage. Nadia proceeded to tell them about the rescue operation. Wow, that's interesting, Miguel replied. Now I know why we were questioned so thoroughly when we booked our rooms here in the pavilion. We were told that they have no tolerance policy for any guests under the age of 16, and the visitors from outside cannot join in the rooms. I guess they saw us as two single men and figured we were here for nefarious reasons. Yes, Nadia explained. It's the policy of all the finer hotels and restaurants to question anyone who is accompanied by an underage boy or girl, and if you can't prove it's your child, then security is called. Well, now that there's 4 of us, it'll be easier to look like we're actual tourists, Jack laughed. And speaking of that, where should we go today? Now, we've been told to visit the museums and the temples, stay around the touristy locations as much as possible and try to blend in. Anything in particular you guys want to see? Well, I'd like to go to the Tool Slang Museum, Nadia said. Okay, well, let's do it, but first I want to get some food, Jack replied. We haven't eaten since lunch yesterday, and I want some pizza and a cold beer. Cambodian food is a rich and flavorful tapestry woven from centuries of traditional regional ingredients and cultural influences from neighboring Thailand, Vietnam, China, even France. It is known as Khmer cuisine, and the food is both unique and unforgettable, intensely flavorful with occasionally surprising ingredients. Along the bustling riverfront of Phnom Penh, a string of cozy, lantern-lit restaurants and cafes spill out onto the sidewalks, their tables shaded by fluttering parasols and overhanging frangipani trees. The scent of garlic, grilled meats, and lemongrass drifts into the air as tourists, backpackers, and locals alike settle in for a leisurely meal with views of the Mekong River. And here, the pace slows. Conversations stretch along, and the meals turn into a lingering lazy affairs under the glow of fairy lights. One of the more infamous items on the menu is called a happy pizza, a thin crust pizza laced with cannabis-infused oil and dried leafy toppings sprinkled on top, just like oregano, served quietly to those who know how to ask. Not all restaurants offer it, and most don't advertise it, but those that do are well known. A wink, a nod, and a gentle word to the waiter can result in a pie that's a little more relaxing than most. It's not exactly legal, but in the hazy gray area of enforcement, it remains one of those uniquely Cambodian experiences. Above the table, a menu board shows the different pizza offerings. A large, happy pizza is $6. A pitcher of Angkor beer, a local lager named after the legendary temples, served cold, frosty, and sweating in the humid heat. Now that's only $3. The waitress asks, "You want a little happy or a lot of happy?" To which the cannabis toppings will be adjusted. The laughter that followed was real and much needed. For a few brief moments, the heavy burden they all carried, of rescue missions, of danger and secrets, of girls still in hiding, it lifted just enough to let in a warm breeze of normalcy. They passed around a pitcher of ice-cold Anchor beer, toasting to strange menus, old friends, and the comfort of family found in the most unexpected corners of the world. "So, I don't care what's in this pizza," Julian said with a mock-serious tone, raising his glass. "It's just good to be with y'all, right here and right now." Jack nodded, clinking his glass with the others. "Amen to that." And for a little while, the mission faded into the background. The tuk-tuk rattled to a stop outside a pale, nondescript building nestled in the middle of Phnom Penh. From the outside, the structure looked like an ordinary high school campus, its faded yellow paint peeling and the iron bars on the windows sun-worn and rusting. But the moment Jack stepped out and read the sign, Tuol Sleng Genocide Museum, he felt the weight settle on his shoulders. The others fell silent as they entered. There was no flashy exhibits, no interactive displays, just raw history laid bare. The first thing they saw was a room with rows of black and white photographs, mugshots of prisoners taken upon their arrival. Thousands of men, women, and children, faces frozen in time, some defiant, others blank with shock. Some children stared at the camera, innocent and unaware. The Khmer soldiers photographed every single prisoner as they were brought in alive, and then again at their death, creating a morbid visual archive of suffering, a haunting gallery of faces frozen in fear, confusion, and pain that now lines the walls of Tuol Sleng, bearing silent witness to one of humanity's darkest chapters. Nadia moved slowly past the wall of images, tears filling her eyes. "So many kids," she whispered. Jack nodded grimly, his jaw clenched. Every one of them had a name, a life, a family, but no future. Miguel took a step closer to one of the photos. An older man, blood crusted at the corner of his mouth. His eyes were wide with horror. Miguel let out a breath and turned away. "This is worse than I imagined." As they moved from one room to the next, the story of S-21 unfolded in brutal detail. Once a high school, the building had been converted by the Khmer Rouge into a prison and a torture center. More than 18,000 people passed through its gates. Fewer than a dozen survived. Julian stared at the rusted bed frame bolted to the floor in one of the interrogation rooms. On the wall was a photograph, black and white, of a corpse strapped to that same bed, blood pooled beneath. "They kept the furniture exactly how it was found," he muttered, "even the stains." The smell in the air was old and musty, but somehow still sharp with memory. They walked in silence through hallways lined with makeshift prison cells, tiny brick enclosures stacked side by side, each no larger than a closet. "What kind of monster does this to people?" Nadia murmured. "To children." "They wanted to erase anyone who posed a threat," Jack said quietly. "Even those who could read or wore glasses, even monks, anyone who might think differently, anyone who was educated." In one of the final rooms, they paused at a glass case holding the victim's belongings. Worn sandals, tattered clothes, a child's toy. Another held shackles, horrendous torture instruments. Miguel shook his head, struggling to speak. I thought I'd seen the worst of what people can do, but this? It stays with you, Jack said. You don't walk away from this place unchanged. They stood in the courtyard for a long time afterward, beneath the swaying branches of a fragrant frangipani tree, the distant hum of the city like a world away. This isn't just Cambodia's history, Julian finally said. It's humanity's. We've got to remember it. We've got to learn from this, to treat each other with more respect and more kindness. Nadia touched the small woven bracelet that she'd bought from a street child outside the gate of the museum, a silent gesture of remembrance. And we've got to fight for the ones still being hurt. That's why we're here. The four of them looked up at the building once more, now ghostly quiet, and turned to leave. The sun was low on the horizon, casting golden light across the barbed wire strung along the balcony rail. It was once placed there to keep the prisoners from throwing themselves to their deaths. As they walked away, not one of them said a word. There were no words big enough. Only a shared determination to stand against evil, wherever it hid, whatever it cost. It wasn't far, just outside the city limits, but the ride felt longer. The mood in the tuk-tuk was heavy, no one speaking. They were all still processing Tuol Sleng, and now they were about to step into its final chapter. The moment they arrived, the silence of the place struck them. There were no blaring horns or street vendors here, only the sound of the wind through the trees and the distant hum of insects. The sun was warm on their backs, but the air was cold with memory. A soft-spoken guide handed them headsets for the audio tour, gestured for them to begin. They walked slowly along the gravel paths. Green grass had returned to the land, butterflies fluttered lazily over the fields. But then they saw the depressions, sunken areas in the ground, pocked along the landscape like scars. Mass graves. Some still bore rags of clothing sticking up through the dirt. Bones, too. Sometimes worked their way to the surface during the rainy season. At one tree, a weathered sign read, "Killing tree, against which executioners slung children and infant." Nadia stopped in her tracks. "Dear God," she whispered. Miguel closed his eyes, fists clenched. This is where they brought the people from Tuol Sleng. Jack nodded slowly. They'd tell them they were going somewhere new, to a better place. Then they'd bring them here. They passed the glass shrine that stood at the center of the site, the stupa. Inside, stacked high on wooden shelves, were thousands of skulls, each one a silent testament to a life taken. Julian took off his hat and bowed his head. "We can't undo what happened here," he said, "but we can damn sure make sure it doesn't happen again." The group stood together for a long time, heads bowed, the breeze whispering through the field like the voices of the dead. Later that evening, they gathered at a quiet rooftop bar just above the riverfront. Below, Phnom Penh buzzed with life, tuk-tuks rattling, music blaring, lights shimmering off the dark waters of the Mekong. It was hard to believe the same city could hold such darkness and such beauty. They each nursed a cold Angkor beer, the ice in their glasses slowly melting. The sunset painted the sky in hues of fire and rose. "I keep thinking about that tree," Nadia said softly, breaking the silence. Jack didn't respond, he just stared into his drink. "They put up signs and monuments," Miguel said, "but how does a country ever move on from something like that?" "Now they don't," Julian answered. "They carry it like a scar. But they keep living. They keep rebuilding." "What's hardest for me to grasp," Jack finally said, is that I was alive while this was happening. I, riding my horse, playing baseball with my friends, rodeoing, and all the while this horror was unfolding, unnoticed by most of the world. There were over 2 million people exterminated, mothers, children, teachers, artists, monks, anyone who was educated, anyone who could read. While the rest of the world argued over disco records and bell-bottoms, this country was being gutted from the inside out. Jack took a deep breath. The only way to honor the ones who died is protect the ones still alive. And that's why we're here. Nadia nodded slowly. Then let's make sure every step we take in this country is toward justice. The four of them sat quietly as the sky deepened into indigo. Below them, the city pulsed with energy, unaware of the mission that they had just taken on. But something had shifted in each of them. They hadn't just seen history. They had felt it, and it had lit a fire in their bones. They weren't just tourists. Not anymore. They were witnesses. And now they were ready for whatever came next. The next morning, the golden light of dawn filtered through the curtains of their modest hotel rooms. Phnom Penh stirred to life outside. The hum of the tuk-tuks, the vendors shouting their morning wares, and the scent of sweet grilled meats wafting through the air. But inside, a heavy silence lingered. Yesterday's visit to Tuol Sleng and the killing fields had left its mark, especially on Nadia, who lay staring at the ceiling, her thoughts dark and restless. I need to go someplace sacred, she finally whispered, sitting up and dialing Jack's room. Let's go see the temples today. I need peace. After breakfast, their first stop was Wat Phnom, the city's namesake temple perched atop a small green hill in the very heart of the capital. As they climbed the winding staircase past ornate nagas and curious monkeys, the mood began to shift. The temple's stupa towered above them, adorned with gold leaf that shimmered in the sun. As Jack, Natia, Miguel, and Julian climbed the stone steps under the leafy shade of ancient trees, the noise melted away. The climb was short but symbolic, as if they were leaving behind the chaos and stepping into something timeless. The main stupa was surrounded by fluttering prayer flags and fragrance incense coils left by devotees. Inside, the walls were painted with vivid murals of Buddhist parables, stories of karma, compassion, rebirth. A group of elderly women sat in a corner chanting softly, their voices rising and falling like a tide. Nadia whispered a silent prayer, not just for the girls that they'd helped rescue, but for all those that they hadn't yet found. Incense swirled in curling tendrils around ancient Buddhist statues draped in saffron cloth, while the quiet murmur of prayers echoed softly against the walls. Jack knelt, respectfully bowing his head, even though he wasn't really sure what formality he was supposed to observe. It kind of felt awkward, removing his boots before entering, but everyone else had removed their shoes, so he figured it was a good idea. Legend has it the temple was built in 1372 by a wealthy widow named Dawn Pen, who discovered 4 Buddha statues hidden in a tree floating down the Mekong River. She built a shrine to house them atop the hill, and the city was eventually named in her honor. Jack's Christian upbringing and the churches he had known back in the States felt worlds apart from the quiet serenity of these Buddhist temples. The stillness, the flickering candles, and the scent of incense stirred something deeper. Less about doctrine, more about presence. For Miguel, who was raised Catholic, the atmosphere felt familiar and comforting. The soft lighting and ritualistic reverence reminded him of home, of sacred spaces where silence spoke volumes. Next, they made their way to Wat Unlan, just a few blocks from the riverfront. Unlike the popular tourist draws, Wat Unlan felt like a living monastery. Founded in 1443, it houses the head of the Cambodian Buddhist order and contains ancient scriptures in Pali, etched onto palm leaves. As the group walked through its quiet courtyards, monks in saffron robes crossed paths with them, nodding and greeting. The temple complex was large and serene, filled with fluttering pigeons and shaded by bawdy trees. Now inside the main hall, Nadia lit a fresh stick of incense and bowed her head before the golden Buddha. For a long time she just knelt in silence, the weight of the past few days slowly easing from her shoulders. Here, surrounded by symbols of compassion and enlightenment, she could finally breathe. Their final stop was Wat Lengka, one of the oldest temples in Phnom Penh, and perhaps the most unexpected. Tucked away from the bustle of the city center, this temple had a simplicity and grace that set it apart. Founded in 1442 as a sanctuary for sacred texts and spiritual retreat, it had once been a safe haven during the times of war. And now it welcomed both monks and lay people seeking reflection. They removed their shoes and entered the main hall, where a massive seated Buddha presided over rows of flickering candles. The air smelled of sandalwood and beeswax. It was quiet here, reverently so. A few worshippers sat cross-legged on the floor, meditating. A young monk passed by, smiling shyly at Nadia as he filled a lantern. "I can see why people come here to find peace." Miguel nodded, then glanced at Jack. "I think we needed this today, more than we realized." They sat in the temple for quite a while, not speaking, simply absorbing the calm. Outside the temple walls, their mission, and all of its danger, still waited. But for the brief interlude, among ancient statues and timeless prayers, they were grounded again, and that, Jack thought, was sacred enough. "This," Nadia said softly, "feels like healing." Outside, the city roared on, but inside the sacred spaces, time seemed to pause, offering just a brief, necessary reprieve from the darkness that they had witnessed. The contrast between yesterday's grim walk through Cambodia's darkest history and today's peaceful temple visits could not have been more profound. Where tool sling and the killing fields left a scar on their hearts, the golden spires and the gentle chants of the temples offered a kind of healing. It reminded them that while pain and evil had once ruled this land, so had resilience and beauty. As they stepped back into the busy streets of Phnom Penh, the group felt grounded, united, and ready. Ready to face whatever came next, and to discover the remaining mysteries, both light and dark, that Cambodia still held in its ancient, layered heart.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode, and I hope you'll join us next week for another installment of the Wolfman Chronicles. And until then, have a great week, everyone.